Okay, so this is solving and using properties to justify. So if you notice, this is coming from Strike a Balance Solving Linear Equations, Lesson 1, and this is page M279. So we are going to solve equations, and then we're going to justify or use properties to justify. So these are the properties of equality. We're going to talk about them in a second. I actually took this and transferred it to my notebook so that I can, or so that you have one place to look at all of them, because there are those, and then there are also these on this back side of this page. So I went ahead and wrote all of those out. So we have properties of equality for all numbers, and then we have number properties. And these ones are a little bit more challenging, other than the distributive. I think that one's pretty easy. So up to this point, we've been just solving problems or solving equations. Now we're going to start, you're going to have to justify. When you get to geometry at the high school, you will have to, or whenever you get to geometry, I should say, but you do have to give like the steps. It's called proofs, and so you do have to give steps. So that's what we're going to start getting you in the mindset of. So we have these, and then we have this example, which is actually 2A. But what we're going to do first is we're just going to solve it like we have been. So I'm going to circle my variables. Notice the variables are on opposite sides. So that means you're going to have to do the opposite to one of them. Sorry, I was moving my foot and it was shaking the table. So you're going to have to do the opposite to one of them. Normally I would move the 4x, and you could do that. It would just make your properties listed differently. But I'm going to move the 24 just because I want to get them together, and I don't want to move more to this side because that's not going to help me very much. So we have 24x. So then 24x, I'm going to subtract 24x and subtract 24x. So if you look at this, all we are doing is we are moving stuff around so that we can get the variable by itself. Well, what did I do to both sides of the equation? So you're going to look up here. Notice these are the properties of equality. So if you're having to give which property was used, notice this first one. I'm going to go ahead and talk about these just a little bit. So we have addition property of equality. Notice if we have AB, and that's just anything equals anything, if you add a C to both sides, they still have that equality. They're still equal. Adding something to both sides does not change anything. So notice it's the addition property of equality, and we added. Okay, this next one, subtraction. So what do you think you're going to do? You're going to be subtracting to both sides of the equation. So subtraction. I actually don't have enough highlighters, but I have a green one. Then we have multiplication. So notice they multiplied C to both, so that's why it's called the multiplication property. And then I'm just going to use an orange marker, and we have division property, so we divided both sides by C. So notice this one added C, subtracted C, multiplied by C, and divided by C. So thankfully that's one thing in math where they didn't try to confuse you with random words that don't make any sense. So thankfully subtraction just means subtract. So if we look back down here at what we just did, notice in this step to try to solve for a variable, we subtracted, so you would say it was the subtraction property. Okay, then continue to solve. So I'm going to continue solving. I just can't find my black pen. Oh, there it is. So then you're going to bring down the 7. So 7, bring down the equals. And then you have -4 minus 24. So if I owe you $4 and I owe you 24, 4 and 4 more that I owe you would be 8. So it'd be -28x. So then once I have that, continue to solve. So you're just solving. Even if you want to solve everything and then go write the properties, that's fine too. So we have -28x. So that's currently -28 times x. So the opposite of multiply would be to divide. So notice, what are we doing to both sides? We're dividing. So if I needed to justify which step I used, I would just say that I was doing the division property. I divided the same number to both sides. I divided -28 to both sides. So this step would just be the division property. A negative divided by a negative cancels. 28 divided by 28 cancels. So then I would do 7. And I'm just going to do it on my calculator. 7 divided by 28. Make sure you hit that negative. And you get -0.25 equals, bring down your x. And that would be your final answer. The only thing that we did differently is that we wrote the properties that were happening each time. Okay, so now we're going to do another example. Okay, so we have 3 parentheses 2x plus 1 equals 4x plus 6. Okay, first thing I need to do, if I circled this variable and circled this variable, notice this one is inside of a parentheses, so we need to do that first. So I'm going to, well, actually you don't have to do it first. It's whichever way makes the most sense to you, but I like to get rid of the parentheses first. It would still be the same, but yeah, so here we go. So we have 3 times 2x. Remember this, I'm multiplying this 3 into both of those. So 3 times 2x, 3 times 2 is 6, x, 3 times 1 is 3, so make sure you put plus 3 equals 4x plus 6. So what did I just do in this blue step right here? If you flip back over, notice that would be the distributive property. The A is now multiplied into both of those parts. So let me use my blue highlighter. So the A got multiplied into the B and A into the C. So that's where this A and this A came from. That's the distributive property. Okay. So then when we look at this, over here you're going to write distributive property, and then we're just going to solve like we have been doing. So circle your variables. We have 6x and we have 4x. They're on opposite sides of the equation, so I need to do the opposite sign to one of them. So would I want to, so you could either move the 6 or move the 4. I personally like to move the smaller one so I don't end up with a negative number. So you're going to see me do the opposite of this 4x. So it's 4x plus 6. The 4 is positive, so I'm going to subtract 4x and subtract 4x. So then 6x minus 4x would be 2x. Bring down the plus 3, bring down the equals, and bring down the 6. So what step did I do, or what step could I justify in how I found the next part of the equation? So I did the subtraction property. Okay, so then continue on the same path. Let me get a different color. So then we have 2x, we have plus 3, so what's the opposite of add 3? You're going to subtract 3, so it would be 2x equals 6 minus 3 is 3. So again, what did we do right here? We did subtraction again. Okay, next step, we have 2x equals 3, so continue solving. So it's 2 times x, what's the opposite of multiply by 2? Well, it's divide by 2, and divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 cancels. Sorry, hopefully that green's not too hard to see. So then we would say x equals 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. So what step did we do at this very last step? Is division. So the division property. So again, it's solving the same way that you did. The only difference is that you have to write the step. I do want to go back and talk about the commutative property and the associative property, because those are the two that always seem to be the hardest. So if you look at this one, we have a plus b is b plus a. So if you think about 1 plus 2, 1 plus 2 is 3. Well, if I write that in the order of 2 plus 1, does it change the answer? So 1 plus 2 equals 2 plus 1. So commutative property is just changing the order. So if you change the order, so instead of 1 plus 2, you wrote 2 plus 1, it's the same thing. Same thing as when you multiply. If I do 1 times 2, it's the same thing as doing 2 times 1. The order does not matter. So really, commutative property is just changing the order of which the numbers are written. Associative property, so this one is if I have a plus b, or a plus the parentheses b plus c is equal to a plus b plus c. So again, let's just do 1, 2, 3. So we'll do 1 plus 2 plus 3. So if all of the operations are exactly the same, it doesn't matter what order you complete them in. So if we do the parentheses first, 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 1 is 6. This one, if we do 2 plus 1, or 1 plus 2, that's 3, plus 3 is also 6. Same thing when you multiply. 1, 2 times 3, what multiply inside first, 2 times 3 is 6, times 1 is 6. 1 times 2 times 3, 2 times 1 is 2, times 3 is 6. So this one is just order does not matter when all same operations. And it's always, it has to be adding and multiply. You cannot change the order when you subtract, because if you had 2 minus 1 and then you wrote it as 1 minus 2, that definitely changes it. So the associative property is when you are adding and multiplying, the order does not matter for you to complete the problems.